I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried. Will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hey everybody, Kristin here, and we are doing a show with one of the podcasters on the network. We're going to talk a little bit about that show and about her in just a minute. Her name is Kat Schwarz, and she does a show with Joe Mitsch, who I've had on many, many times. He's my buddy. Kat, welcome yourself to the show.
And we thank you so much. And we have that in common. He's one of my best friends. So it's a lot of fun to work with him.
Yes, it is. And he can go on, many, many different shows, which is nice, very versatile.
Absolutely. He's a brilliant guy with a lot to offer.
Absolutely. So tell our listeners a little bit about you and your background.
I would love to. So my name is Kathleen, or Kat Schwarz. I am a physical therapist. I got my master's in physical therapy in 2002, and I've worked in the field ever since in a variety of settings. I currently work in an acute rehab hospital, though luckily I've been, with the virus, able to not work as much. So I certainly don't consider myself on the front line of this. Additionally, I am a yoga teacher. I am a 200-hour certified yoga teacher. I am a Thai massage therapist. I'm a Reiki master, and I am a passionate advocate for what we're going to talk about today, which is intuitive eating and the body positivity movement, or the fat positivity movement, and all that impacts our healthcare system and really what I'm trying to do in that realm. So I'm really excited for today's episode.
Yeah, I am too. And tell, we're going to say it, a few times, but the name of the show that you're doing and why you have a little bit of a disclaimer.
Right. Okay. So you can't find any episode yet. That is our disclaimer, because though Joe and I have had intentions throughout 2020 to start, we have pretty much only come up with the title and the concept. So it is called Trauma Redefined with Kathleen and Joe. And even he insisted my name go first, even though he's all the one with the experience. And what we really want to touch on is our experience with trauma starting in childhood, and the consequences that has had on our physical and mental health throughout our lifespan, and issues with substance abuse and eating disorders, which is what we're going to start touching on today. And I think I've been privileged enough to be put on a statewide task force through the NJEA to spread not just awareness, but actually bring into our institutions what's known as the ACEs study, and that stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And that study shows that trauma is far more prevalent than people realize. I used to myself think that trauma was only experienced by those who had gone to war or, people on the front lines of violence. And then I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, and everything changed for me. So it's something we're really excited about, but 2020 kicked our asses personally, not just in the way it kicked everyone's asses, but we both had a lot of change in our personal lives throughout the last year. So 2021 is definitely the year you'll hear us finally coming together to talk about these things.
Yeah. And it's funny. I love that, 2020 kicked your ass. Yeah.
It really did.
Putting that out there, out about the podcast world, you gotta, I know listeners, you understand this, but every so often, I've been doing shows for like 8 years. So there's stuff out there, and I'm appalled sometimes at my behavior from 8 years ago or 4 years ago, or what I thought, or something that flew out of my mouth, because we're human, but those shows are out there. So, it's me maturing, regressing, whatever, as I go on this journey. And I'm not a regular interviewer. This is a conversation, it's not I'm not Terry Gross by any stretch of the imagination. So I love it when I get these reviews, and I have a lot. So you're going to have good ones and bad ones. Most of mine are good, like 98%. But you get these ones where people are like, oh, the host is this too much. They should be doing that. And, why aren't they doing enough shows, and blah, blah. And you're like, okay, wait a minute. Please show me the book that says this is how podcasts are supposed to be done. And every podcaster pays to have every show edited, their time, their money, everything. So,
and to have the show on the air in the first place. I don't think people realize it either. It's not a free enterprise. So
yeah, there's no rule book. And if you don't like a show, these people work their asses off. Don't leave a bad review. Just don't listen to it again. It's so disheartening when it's something like mental health and you've paid for this stuff. And, you may not like what somebody has to say, but, they're talking about their mental health. If you don't like it, God, turn the channel. Don't write a scathing, not that mine was scathing, but I hear it from other podcasters. They get so, disheartened. And I'm like, you know what? Who cares? It's a jerk. Anyone that would take the time out to go and write something crappy when you're talking about a mental health story, that's a jerk. They're writing about themselves in your review.
Yeah. And that's certainly what the behavior suggests. But underneath it, hurt people, right? So, have compassion for the person who does find time in their day to hurt another person, because ultimately that's a projection of their own pain.
Right.
And we have to be able to meet that with compassion and know that anytime you're putting yourself out there publicly, you're going to have supporters and you're going to have detractors or haters, and haters going to hate, and you just have to take it as part of the job, I guess.
Right.
And know that that's part of what makes this so courageous, right? Because putting yourself out there is scary, and it does open you up and make you very vulnerable to criticism. And so be it. I say, if you want to call me crazy, get in line. There's plenty of people that think I'm crazy. So fine, join the crowd, and the people I resonate with and I am for, I'm not for everybody. And the people I am for, are going to listen, and the people who don't want to listen, I wish them well too.
Yeah, absolutely. Or just not even that they don't like someone, just the not thinking that it's a human being behind when you're writing something nasty on social media, or you're writing a book review, or like forgetting that this is a human being. Is this, is it necessary to attack this person? Have some compassion there. It's
and I absolutely have compassion for you, of course, and anyone who's receiving harsh comments when you're really just trying to put honest work out in the world and make a difference, for the people for whom the messages are meant for, right?
Exactly. And sometimes if it triggers you and it makes you angry, there's something to look at. There's a gift in that for you.
100%. And that's, I think, what the commenter doesn't realize is that their anger is a sign that that was a message they needed to hear. And, our anger tells us what needs changing in our lives, yeah, so it's unpleasant. It's an unpleasant side effect, but certainly not a reason to not keep going with the wonderful work you're doing.
Right. Exactly. So segueing from that to 2020, I've noticed that most shows, not all of them, but most shows on our network took a dip in listeners. And what's interesting, I know that it's just because of 2020, because the dip happened the minute that like everything was great, numbers off the chain until March 15th. And then boom. And you know what? And now people's numbers are starting to go back up, which is awesome. But what I say about that is last year was freaking hard and we're not out of it yet.
No, not by any stretch.
It was almost like, okay, we're already in a horrible place. We don't know what to do. People are struggling with their mental health, and maybe people that have never looked at that or taken it seriously. And the last thing they need to hear is what we had to say. But now that they're coming out of it, now it's, I want to hear what they have to say. So you just kind of ride, through those things. And some of that I've heard with so many people is whatever their go-to coping stuff was. So if they're a drinker or they smoke a lot of weed or they have an eating disorder or they have an issue with spending too much money or all of the above, that like popped up for 2020 for so many people. We're talking 300% increase in women over 40 trying to get into eating disorder programs. So
wow,
there's this phenomenon, of course, because so stressed out, of people going to those things. I want to kind of veer it towards the eating disorder space or eating in general when we binge eat or whatever we're doing with food and how we look at our bodies. But that happened, like I said, 300% increase. So we're all going through it.
I didn't know that. And that segues beautifully into what we're going to talk about today, because that was really my first introduction that my mental health was not normal or whatever, that I had issues with my mental health, because I had always been so high functioning. I was a straight A student up through graduate school. I was a physical therapist with a master's degree by 23 and started a successful career. And I always had a boyfriend, and I got married and had 2 kids and the house with the fence. And, I was doing all the things that, I was supposed to be doing. And yet on the surface or underneath all of that, since a very early age in my preteens, I had been struggling first with emotions, a lot of binge eating and emotional eating, which caused a lot of weight gain. And then at the age of 16, segued into eating disordered behavior, which became chronic dieting. And I did that for the next 20 years. And I didn't foresee any problem in that, because not only was my mother, and all of her friends dieting and actively teaching me Weight Watchers points and taking me to meetings. And but doctors were prescribing it, and nutritionists were prescribing it. And I was a physical therapist with a master's degree, and I had never heard anything but calories in and calories out. And
Right.
That being such a simple formula for weight loss. And yet, I had been struggling then for 20 years. This is 2015 when this came to a head. And what happened in 2015 that truly blew my mind was I read a book. And the book is called Intuitive Eating, and it's by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. And when I read this book, it was the first time that everything I ever thought about dieting and weight and health and my labeling myself as a feminist and what that really meant was all thrown on its head. And I started questioning everything, because the information in this book was so different, antithetical even to everything I'd ever been taught. And but it happened to make so much sense. It was like every time I turned the page, I was thought, oh my God, how do these women know me? How are they in my head? How do they understand my behaviors in a way I don't? How could they possibly know me so intimately? So the women I'm talking about, Evelyn Tribole and Elise Rush, are registered dietitians. And in 1985, they started practicing and they started prescribing weight loss in the way that everyone does to their patients who came to them for obesity treatment. And after just 10 years of seeing that these clients were coming back, having great success initially, but coming back years later, having gained all the weight and oftentimes more, completely dejected, completely blaming themselves.
Yeah.
And and they started saying, well, what's wrong with this process? What's wrong? Instead of what's wrong with these people, they actually had the gall to say, what's wrong with this process? And to date, now 25, almost 26 years later, the fourth edition of the book was released in the summer of 2020 and has a lot of really great updates, especially in the social justice realm. So I would highly encourage you to read the book. But now, almost 26 years later, there's over 100 studies validating what these women said, which essentially boils down to dieting is the problem, not the solution. And what I mean by that is that every time we try to intentionally lose weight, our bodies perceive that as starvation. And yes, while the weight does come off initially because we're not giving our body the fuel it needs. And oftentimes we're hyper exercising and we're burning lots of calories. So yes, while initially diet after diet, you will lose lots of weight. As soon as the body perceives whatever you're going to call it, maintenance mode, or, just trying to watch what you eat, your body is going to make it its number one goal to restore that weight. And it will be successful. 98% of the time, over the course of 3 to 5 years, you will gain back all of the weight you lost, and 2/3 of people will gain back more.
Mm.
It is a biologically predictable process that we've known about since the 1950s. When the Minnesota starvation experiment was conducted. You can look through that on your own if you want. But this is not news, and it goes deeper. So our weight, much like our height and our eye color and our shoe size, is largely determined by genetics. We are born, this is known as the set point theory. We are born with a genetic predisposition toward a weight range. It's a range. It's not a specific number, but it's more of a 10 to 20 pound range in which your body feels balanced or achieves homeostasis, as it's known biologically. And when the outside world, prescribes weight loss, because a child's natural body is becoming maybe larger than his or her peers. And we use the BMI as the standard. And we're going to talk about why that should be eradicated from our healthcare system. But when we use these standards and we prescribe weight loss, what happens is, as I explained, every diet is perceived by the body as starvation. And what the body ultimately decides, the reason that 2/3 of people gain more weight than they lost is because the body raises the biological set point. So it makes it nearly impossible for the body to fall below a certain weight.
I did not know this. That is interesting. So if you used to be, your set point used to seem like it was like 135 pounds, but you've done yo-yo dieting and all this stuff for over the years, your body set point can be 150 pounds or then 175 pounds. Is that what you're saying? Because of what you're doing to it over the years?
Essentially. So the more you diet, the higher your set point. So essentially,
Wow.
Obesity, this is the quote, not mine, but it's anonymous. I don't know who said it. Dieting is a cure that does not work for a disease that does not exist. Because without the dieting, without the restriction, without the body's panicking and saying, oh my goodness, I need to do this, 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 and this. I mean, we're talking about a coordinated effort by the body that includes making you depressed so that you can't get out of bed and you can't burn calories. Any of us who've been depressed knows what, the excruciating, how excruciatingly hard it can be simply to get out of bed.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
so, and the hormones that control satiation dissipates. You no longer feel full. And the hormones that control hunger go out off the charts. So you can't eat enough. You're constantly hungry. And any of us who have been on diets know that feeling of you just can't eat enough. And that is your body being very, very wise. That is your body trying to save your life.
Wow.
Your body perceives that you are in danger. Remember, evolutionarily, there were famines, right? We remember this. Our bodies remember this. And, they don't understand, our bodies, that there's a McDonald's on every corner and a grocery store full of food. All they understand is you're not feeding it when your body's asking for food. And that is an emergency.
Does that work too when you are overeating, but you keep eating because you feel like you're hungry, even though you have eaten more than you should already? Does it work in that respect too, where your body just sort of is, or your brain is kind of tricked into thinking that you're still hungry because it's making up for when you just did your diet, now you're not on it anymore, or whatever the situation might be?
Absolutely. I would go so far as to say that for every diet, there's an equal and opposite binge. That it's just that it doesn't take place in the same time frame. So the person who's now regaining the weight is not associating, with self-blaming, is saying, oh, well, this is my fault. I have no willpower. They're calling it willpower when really it's your body's will to live. So,
Wow.
it's
That's huge. That's
it's
actually
huge.
huge. Yeah.
It's huge.
Because there's so much, you're a way to look at it would be, well, I'm screwed either way, but there's an answer to this. But and part of the answer is eliminating the act of dieting and the based on the description that we've given it, or the or what it is.
Right. Well, I think we've focused on the doom and gloom part, right?
Right.
It does sound pretty doom and gloom. Well, what now? What, right? I mean, so what's the answer? And there is a lot to be hopeful about in this conversation. So the first thing we'll talk about is what intuitive eating teaches. So by its author's own admission, intuitive eating is something that's available to people who have the means to eat without restriction, financial means. For people on food budgets, intuitive eating can be inaccessible. So, there is privilege in intuitive eating, and I want to acknowledge that, as the authors do. But there is a 10 principled process. It's not, there's no rules in intuitive eating. They are principles, they're guideposts, they're suggestions, but there are 10 of them. And they are designed to weight loss is not the goal of intuitive eating. Now that intuitive eating has become a buzzword because it's gaining popularity and attention, because it's science-based, it's evidence-based, and a lot of celebrities are starting to talk about it, and it's starting to gain momentum. So there's been a lot of co-opting of intuitive eating in the diet industry, which is a $70 billion industry. So, they're very threatened. And anyone who claims to be about intuitive eating and also claims to talks about weight loss is a fraud. So, so it's not about weight loss. It's about improving your relationship with food. Why do you potentially, reach for food every time you have an emotion, positive or negative? Where did that come from? What are the root cause of those behaviors? Can you find how to soothe yourself without using food? Can you learn to relearn to pay attention to hunger signals? Because diets force us to ignore our hunger. So our bodies, after a while, stop sending us those signals. And we have to relearn, if we're not feeling hungry, what are the more subtle signs of hunger? What are those subtle signs of fullness? How do we eat to satisfaction and for pleasure? It's not pleasurable to eat beyond satisfaction, right? It's not pleasurable to not eat when you're hungry, you know? I mean, to not eat, yeah, that's I said that right. To not eat when you're hungry. It's not pleasurable to never move your body, but it's also not pleasurable to eat to exercise to the point of pain.
Right.
And so one of the most important principles in intuitive eating is the satisfaction factor, because of that idea that if you are aiming for satisfaction, then you will naturally move towards eating when your body actually biologically needs food, stopping when you've had enough, physically enough, not based on standards of supposedly, how much we're all supposed to be eating. That just doesn't work like that. Some days bodies need lots of food and other days bodies need very little food. And it all balances out in the end. And we have to take the pressure off of what we're eating, why we're eating it. And there is the first step of intuitive eating, which scares a lot of people off, is this complete and total allowance and permission for all foods. And what happens, because the body has become so accustomed to the food police, as intuitive eating calls it, of all these rules around eating and good and bad foods, rather than just this is nourishment for the body, that you'll take those foods that you consider now trigger foods. For me, they were goldfish, which I don't even like now. The goldfish crackers I used to eat by the handful. I think I just needed the salt. And I didn't even think I could have them in the house. And you actually go out and you physically buy these trigger foods or things that you think are trigger foods, and you allow yourself to eat them freely until the point where you habituate yourself to them. Oh, they're just crackers, or it's just cake, or it's just cookies, or it's
just an entire tub of red vines. Yes.
And gotcha. That's fine. Those tubs are important, because I promise you, if you allow yourself a tub of anything every night, by week 2 or 3, you're going to be sick of that tub.
Yeah. So true. So
and it's going to fall off of the pedestal. And you know what? Maybe you gain some weight in the process, but you also gain a lot of wisdom. And the other shine. So the first good news is there's a process out there to, and people who train to teach you how to do it. And I was self-taught. I read the book and I just started following the principles. And then the other part of this that's really important to highlight is that fat has gotten a really bad rap for no reason.
Yeah.
Fat is actually not unhealthy, and thin is not a synonym for healthy. And there's so much evidence to show there's something out there called the obesity paradox, which now we have, I believe, more than 11 diseases that have been shown where people who are studied who have body weights in the overweight and mildly obese categories per the BMI, and we'll get there, live longer than their thinner counterparts. Fat is health protective. And the fact that we are a fat phobic society and a fat phobic healthcare system, and that literally means the fear of fat or the fear of getting fat, because this fat phobia, which is far more rooted in white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism than it is in fact, is killing thin and fat patients alike, because we're denying people basic health care based on the fact that they have higher weights. And we're also telling people who are thinner, oh, you're healthy, when they perhaps are not.
Yeah, I had a couple of friends that were concerned. They'd ended up not having to go to the hospital, but they were concerned about with things now, COVID and hospitals overrun and so on. They were concerned because according to the BMI, they would be considered morbidly obese. And they felt like, well, since they're having to be careful who they pick and choose to take in based on what based on our current healthcare system, that the determination might be, look, you're a goner, you're morbidly obese. This is going to hit you. There's nothing we can do. Let's take a different patient in that's thinner. I'm not saying, please don't jump down my throat, first responders. I'm with you. I'm not saying anybody would do this, but this is the concern. These are the concerns I've been hearing. People are like, I shouldn't even call the hospital because the minute they see me, they're going to see my weight and say, oh, yeah.
This is reality. This is absolutely reality. You're touching on the exact ways in which fat people are oppressed on a daily basis by a system imposed upon them. All the things we've talked about before, it should start infuriating you. If you understand what I'm saying, it should start infuriating you, because the bigger the person, the more they've bought into this crap. They know, ask any person of size, and they know everything about dieting and nutrition, and they've done it all, they've been on it all, and that's the point. It's those of us who were never our natural intuitive eating, and I should mention that we are all born intuitive eaters. We are born knowing how much to eat, and babies don't overfeed themselves. They cry when they're hungry, and when the breast or the bottle has given them enough, they push it away. And when research shows that children who are given a wide variety of food will eat a well-balanced diet over the course of a week. It's not a daily thing. It's balance over the course of a week. Kids are very intuitive, and we teach them otherwise. We teach them, especially when their bodies are bigger than their peers,
right?
Where that natural body diversity, it blows my mind, because it's like we can accept diversity among flowers. Imagine if all flowers looked alike, among trees, among dog breeds, but we can't accept that all bodies were not meant to look like that, quote, Instagram ideal. Really?
Wow.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make logical sense. So why are we all accepting something that doesn't make logical sense? Because neither does white supremacy. That's a delusion, right? Neither does patriarchy. Men aren't better than women, So these are all delusions that we've bought into, and there's very real world consequences. And the BMI, which you brought up, is exactly is probably the most obvious product of what I call medical racism. So where does the BMI come from? Okay, because it's imposed upon all of us, right? You cannot go into your doctor's office or a nutrition's office, not even bring your child, without learning their BMI. And why do we care about this thing? Where did it come from? Why is it so important? Well, when I teach about this, I say BMI. The B stands for bullshit. So it was written or created in the 1800s. I don't know the guy's name offhand, but by a man who was not a medical doctor. He was a sociologist, and he decided he wanted to measure the, quote, ideal man. And the participants in this study were all white European males. And basically their measurements were, it remains unchanged from the 1800s. The original study remains unchanged.
That's frightening.
And it gets worse.
Great.
Let me warn you, it gets worse. And so the creator, again, don't know his name, he even said this was never intended for use for individuals. It was intended for use across populations. It was an epidemiological tool. It was not intended to be used for individuals. And yet it's made our way into the healthcare system. And the evolution of that can be much more eloquently, I feel like I'm stumbling so much on my words here. It must be my anger coming through. But this can be much more eloquently explained in a blog post called, or just Google the racist roots of fat phobia. And it's by an author called Your Fat Friend. And she explains beautifully the history of the BMI. And the only thing that she leaves out, it'll boil your blood, The only thing she leaves out is this even more infuriating thing, which, as I said, it remained unchanged since the 1800s. That was true until I believe it was 1998. In 1998, the standards of the BMI were lowered, causing millions of Americans to supposedly overnight become overweight or obese. And this was done after two pharmaceutical companies who had just created weight loss drugs put together a panel of experts, including physicians and scientists. And the physicians and scientists looked at the data and said, there's absolutely no basis to lower these standards, and they did it anyway. So we are being all measured, and our healthcare, in many cases, like the friends you brought up, are being denied, discriminated against, based on a measure that was never meant to be used for individuals in the first place, has clear roots in racism and patriarchy, as well as capitalism. And we are imposing the standards on the masses, including our children. And we're calling this healthcare. And then on top of that, we are prescribing weight loss, which cannot be said to be evidence-based at this point. We are as sure that dieting causes weight gain as we are that smoking causes cancer. That's how strong the evidence is.
Wow.
And yet this is still standard practice, Kristin.
I know. And what I hate about it, I mean, this is getting into the, the physical side of it, but what I hate about it is so many people have, and I'm gained and lost weight. I'm going to go on the gain weight side because that's my experience. But believe me, there are plenty of people that have gone in the other direction. And what's difficult is you're stressed. Your go-to is controlling food in some way, in that you overeat it or you don't eat enough. That the thing is trying to have something to have control over in a year where things were so out of control. And the reality is things are always kind of, out of control. It's figuring out that's a whole other show. Anyway, I won't go into that, but
well, I'll just say on that, I saw a brilliant tweet once that said, you never had control. You only had anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. What can be hard is when someone's physical appearance changes out of their stress and the reaction other people, give them for this. So if you've lost a bunch of weight, my friends that have gone that direction have said, I am so sick of getting praised for this. I'm so sick of it. And my friends and me, no one said anything to me, but I've kept myself like a hermit, but, have gained weight. It's most definitely you're going to have, wow, because you're wearing it. Wow. Boy, the pandemic hit her hard.
And rather than saying, oh, her body's doing such a beautiful job keeping her alive.
Exactly.
I mean, it's truly sick how we view it. I had my own experience. I'm a mom of two, and my mental health officially broke. It broke pretty good with my first, but officially broke with the trauma of my second birth. And I started off, the reason I even found intuitive eating is because I was in a therapist's office crying every time about how I needed to lose this weight before I could even think about being happy or feeling good. And she's the one who gently suggested I read this book, which really changed everything. But, my mental health journey was long, and it took a really long time, and it took me falling into a suicidal depression in 2017 for me to, really take my mental health seriously. And during that time, whenever I get super stressed, my GI system just fails me. And, and because of a lot of daily vomiting and other GI issues, I was losing medication, side effects and things, making it impossible for me to eat. I was losing a lot of weight quickly as I was struggling with this severe depression. And I can't tell you the number of compliments I received.
Yeah.
And I literally would say like, oh, I'll look great in my casket. Thanks. Because I'm just, it's not a compliment.
I know. And you try to be kind to people. Like I walked out of my house one day and I just, I mean, I live with all these animals, listeners, you know this. And so my daily attire does not need to be dressed up. So, but I was a little bit more dressed up for some reason. And then immediately, oh, so look at you putting on some clothes. Oh yeah, it looks like you've lost weight. I, you don't want to be mean to someone, but I also want to kind of, I just kind of look at them like, really? Like, this is your conversation to me. And then they realize that something's awry, but those things don't help anyone, especially when someone's struggling and you don't know who is struggling or not. It could be someone that looks like, has the figure of a supermodel, but they are struggling worse than someone else who doesn't.
Look at people who take, it's not like only fat people take their lives. I mean, clearly
exactly.
Clearly fitness is not the secret to happiness, right? I mean, we have to stop equating thin and happy.
So
we have to stop equating thin and healthy, because guess what? A lot of people don't know this. The deadliest of all mental illnesses are eating disorders. So we take dieting is the gateway to, it's the number one predictor of of weight gain, and it's the number one predictor of eating disorders. And we lose a lot of anorexics to suicide. So that's, this is a really multifaceted issue that we cannot deny. Yes, I mean, I'm a human woman in this patriarchy, in this, and where it's gotten so much worse with social media, where you're constantly being bombarded by beautiful photos of beautiful people, and this is what I should look like.
Oh, it's awful.
And yeah, I get caught up with that for decades. I just explained that, and I'm not saying it can't be hard, that I can't maybe look at a photo of myself, in a smaller body, or, see an unflattering, quote unquote, unflattering angle in the mirror, and, and think, oh, should I jump back on that weight loss train? But then I just remember everything I talked about today, and that I am so much more than a size. I'm so much more than my gravitational pull, relationship to gravity. That's all your weight is.
So true. And you know what you think about too? I'm sorry, I just got to say this. No. Like the other day I was just having a hard, 4 days, but a lot of stuff had happened. A couple of my friends got, diagnosed with positive for COVID, and just so many things had happened. And I remember on the 4th day, I went, is this me now? Is this my new way of being, that I walk from my bed to the bathroom and back, and that I walk to my desk and do some work, and then I'm back in have I become that person? And it made me laugh, because I thought, that's such an odd judgment. And that's coming from what we're told out there in society,
exactly. It's conditioning.
It's absolutely
conditioning. This idea that we're all supposed to be hustling and productive all the time. That's capitalism.
Yes.
That's not truth. It's actually really harmful to the body to never rest. Rest and that homeostasis, that balance our bodies are seeking. That's the balance. Is that balance between rest and activity, between, satiating hunger and not eating past fullness, between caring for your body no matter what it looks like. Everyone deserves self-love. Everybody deserves to feel beautiful and wear clothes that are comfortable, and and in a variety of styles, and every person deserves to feel sexy and have a sexual relationship with your body, no matter its size, or, and it doesn't even have to be with other people.
Right.
All bodies are deserving of that. And when we buy into our conditioning, and sometimes those voices are very personal. They might be in your voice, but they're really your parents, or, you're a grandmother, or a quote unquote friend, who was just trying to keep you in check with your diet or whatever. And, and it's okay to reframe it as what it is. It's cruelty and it's bullying. And, just because other people might be doing that in society, don't let you be one of them. Don't let that bully live inside your head. And it does take a lot to disengage from it, to stop believing those conditioned thoughts, but it's possible, and it's becoming more widely accepted and practiced. And the more people that step off this diet culture train and start listening and caring and loving their bodies, no matter what it looks like and no matter where that lands you on the weight scale. To be very honest, I think most women would benefit from weight gain. I think our bodies are kind of relishing this time at home. And where I think we're becoming more honest.
Well, I am becoming one with my Buddha, the shape that I've had since before I was born.
The what?
My Buddha.
The Buddha belly?
Yeah.
What we're talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
As a yoga teacher, I'm thinking literally Buddha. Okay.
Gotcha. No, I have this Buddha that's made out of teak that I've had since before I was born. And then my mom, of course, got it in Thailand because that's where we lived when I was little. And so I was looking at that the other night and I went, yeah, I'm okay. I am in the shape of Buddha. That is okay.
I mean, like, could you be in better company?
I know, exactly. Right? Thank you very much.
I mean, I'm sitting in my office right now. I have three Buddha figurines around me. So, yeah, no, we really do need to, on an individual level, start really examining our relationship to dieting and our body image, but on a much bigger, on a societal level, start really examining our use of tools like the BMI and the prescription of weight loss, because again, we can't even claim at this point for that to be evidence-based. And the authors of Intuitive Eating, even in this edition, likened the resistance that healthcare workers have to these ideas, because I can get in very passionate arguments with very well-educated people about this. And the resistance is akin to, are familiar with the Semmelweis effect? Dr. Semmelweis was the first physician to suggest that physicians needed to wash their hands between patients because they could, because they were killing their patients with germs. And his medical license was revoked and he died in a mental institution.
Oh, wow.
He was completely blacklisted for his beliefs. And, that is, I don't think we're in danger of that. Hopefully not. But, that is similar to the resistance that we're starting to see from, more and more of us in the professional world are starting the chorus of, no, the BMI does not belong here. And I personally will be, by the time this episode airs, I'm right in the midst of creating a petition through change.org to start to really move towards policy change and having the BMI and the prescription of weight loss eradicated from our healthcare system, because that's the only way for us to make it just.
Yeah, wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't that be amazing? And so we're going to obviously talk about this more on other shows, but what would you say, some additional advice to people who that was their go-to for 2020 and that we're not really we're out of 2020, but today we're recording this on the 7th of 2021. So, of where they can look to take this, if they're absolutely wigging out about, oh my gosh, I've quote unquote let myself go while I've been at home doing Zoom, and now I have to go back out in the world. And I'm serious, legit, lots of people that listen to this show have emailed that very thing. I'm scared now to go back because of all the comments that are going to be made about how I've let myself go, whether it's thinness or or fatness, quote unquote.
Well, I think it kind of perfectly ties into what we talked about at the top of the show, which is haters are going to hate, right? And right. But I think much more importantly than We aren't in control of what other people think. We aren't in control of what other people say, but we are in control of what we think and what we say. And when we are judging ourselves, we teach other people how to treat us. And when you look in the mirror and all you can see is someone who's bigger and someone who's quote unquote disgusting, or, and those are the words and the judgments that you're leveling at yourself, then those, when and if those comments come at you in society, it's going to sting like hell because you believe it, right? You really believe it. If you can do the hard work of dismantling those belief systems, and beliefs are just thoughts we think over and over again. So when we choose new thoughts of compassion about our bodies and, and our choices that we're making, maybe we become more thoughtful about our food choices, and maybe it just stays in the realm of awareness and thought for now without action, or maybe you're ready to look into this and take more action wherever you find yourself. But you have to stop believing it. And when you truly, and they're out there. I mean, there are people out there who are very large by societal standards and are truly happy and truly love themselves and truly have partners that love themselves.
So true.
And when you see that and you say, you know what, I deserve that too. I'm choosing to be happy regardless of my size, regardless of my relationship to gravity. I'm choosing, regardless of the fact that bullies and assholes exist in the world, I'm choosing to be happy. You move with a different level of confidence and dress your body in a way that makes you feel sexy. Like don't give one thought to the size. When you grab things, just grab multiple sizes. And then when you're trying them on, don't even look at which one it is. Just go by the one, how it feels on your body, and then cut the tag out. So you don't even know and you don't care, because I want your entire wardrobe to make you feel beautiful. And, and again, there's that privilege. Maybe that's not accessible to you. Maybe instead you get a bunch of women together who are around the same size and you do a clothing swap because it's new to you, right? And there are things you want to get rid of. Right. So there's ways to be creative about it and create circles of safety and trust where diet talk isn't, and refuse to engage in diet talk, refuse to engage or accept compliments about your body or any comments about your body. No one has the right to comment on your body. You can set those boundaries and you can hold firm on those boundaries, even when other people don't like it. You don't have to be liked. So there's so many ways to empower yourself so that when you do go back into the workplace, yes, maybe you are physically bigger, but you don't have to carry it with shame. And you don't, and maybe at that point you've read a book and you've started following some principles, if they're accessible to you, that are actually making you feel better in your body. Because here's the magic of intuitive eating. We'll stop on this note. The magic is we think that we have to achieve a certain size to feel good, right? But once you feel good, you don't give a shit what your size is. I mean, I am, many pounds heavier than I was at my quote unquote Weight Watcher goal. And I have never felt happier. I've never felt more sexy. I've never felt more accepting. And yes, I have a very, I wouldn't, whether I would label myself thin or not, I have a very thin, privileged, societally acceptable body. So it's, yes, easier for me to find those labels and accept those labels for myself. But again, there's so many badass women and men in the world who are obese. Well, no, I'm sorry. No, obese is a slur. We don't use that word. Who are fat. Fat right. is a word that people are taking back. Lots of fat babes in this world are showing it and have Instagram accounts. I'm just going to throw out one, Glitter and Laser. She's one of my favorites. She's just the most beautiful. Her fashion is so fierce. She's athletic as hell. She'll show you what real flexibility and strength looks like. And, she's just amazing. And she's living her best life in a body that most people would say, oh, I could never. So, just look for those people who are living out loud despite the bullies.
Absolutely. Well, Kat, I'm so glad you're a part of the network. Tell our listeners again your show and where else they might be able to find you.
Okay, yeah. So the show, hopefully you'll look for it in early 2021. It is Trauma Redefined with Kathleen and Joe. And then you can personally find me. You can email me at Kathleen, my full name, Kathleen at CHS Yoga. I'm the owner of a company called Compassionate Healing Services. And you can find me on Instagram at The Feminist Yogi. There are underscores between the and feminist and yogi. So please find me, please follow me. And when this episode airs, please sign the petition that will be in the comments, hopefully, because I could really use support in getting these ideas beyond awareness and into the policy level.
Absolutely. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode with Kat Schwarz on Mental Health News Radio. Hi, listeners. I'll make it quick. These are some really cool places that give discounts and other cool things for listeners of Mental Health News Radio Network. If you want to get amazing help with healing from narcissistic abuse, go to healfromanarcissist.com. If you want CBD products that are the best of the best, I use them myself, go to proze.com and use the code mentalhealth20, mentalhealth20. If you want to get daily perk ups that help retrain your brain to think more positively, go to perkupdaily.com. And also, just because this one's fun, snarkycandles.com. I guarantee you'll love them. Snarky with a Y, SNARKY candles.com. And don't forget, if you want to hear all the shows on the network about first responders, you can go to firstrespondernmentalhealthnetwork.com, and all of our shows that focus on narcissistic abuse, narcissisticabusehealingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and back to the show.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Walker, and thank you for listening.
And I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the low, low, lows with me. Till my vision clears up perfectly. I can ride the low, low, lows with me.
Good boy.